It's now March 3rd, so we are now just 3 weeks away from OHL playoffs, and that just means three more power rankings to go for the 2024-25 OHL season. And if you're new to the channel, this is power rankings that I put together, not associated with the Ontario Hockey League's power rankings. They have their system. I have a system that I've come up with myself. And based on the results that we've had this past week, there was some surprising ones. It's had an impact on the power rankings. Let's dive right into it. Starting off with number 20, it's the Peterborough Petes, who have fallen 3 positions. And the Petes, mathematically, they're still in the playoff race in the Eastern Conference. They're 11 points back in North Bay with 8 games remaining, but at this point, the playoffs seem very unlikely for the Maroon and White. Last week, Peterborough 0-2-1 was their record. And the loss in Erie, that got a little out of hand. Head coach Rob Wilson leaving the bench to go nose to nose with Otters head coach Chris Millette. Yeah, things getting really tense down at the Erie Insurance Arena. And also there was the emotions in the game against the Windsor Spitfires too, where Rio Kaiser suspended for his actions in that game. So there's a lot of emotions with this Peterborough Petes team, who are right now riding a 5-game losing streak. And it doesn't get any easier. They got a home and home coming up against the Ottawa 67s. It's at the PMC Thursday and then TD Place on Saturday. So if the Peterborough Petes want to keep their playoff hopes alive, they must win these 2 games. At number 19, it's the Niagara Ice Dogs, up 1 position. For Niagara, they snapped their 12-game losing streak with a huge victory on home ice against the first place London Knights. Missing Owen Flores, though, has hurt this team. But I believe they're going to make the playoffs with the way things are right now in the Eastern Conference. They should end their 6-year playoff drought in St. Catharines. Niagara right now, they're 6th in the East, 4 points ahead of Sudbury, and 12 points up on North Bay, who are 8th in the conference. Now, they do have a big game coming up Wednesday on the road. They're going to be visiting the Sudbury Wolves, so they can close the gap there. And then they're in North Bay on Thursday, so they can kind of guarantee their playoff positioning with a win on the Thursday night. And then on Sunday, they return home to take on the Kingston Frontenacs. At number 18, I have the Sarnia Sting. They fell 2 positions this week, and it has been a very tough stretch for Sarnia. They're fighting for their playoff lives right now, and you have to give them credit. They played the Rangers hard at the odd, lost in overtime, but the odd never an easy place to play. But then they won against Guelph on home ice, who are chasing them in the Western Conference standings. So that's a big plus for this team going forward. Sarnia right now, they're 7th in the Western Conference, 1 point better than Sault Ste. Marie and Owen Sound, who are tied for 8th right now. And then they're also 7 points up on the Guelph Storm. So coming up this week, they have another date with Guelph. This time it's Friday night at the Sleeman Center. Saturday, they're in Flint. And then Sunday, they're home to London. So a very important 3-3 coming up. At number 17, I have the North Bay Battalion, who fell 3 positions. The Battalion, they had a great chance this week to solidify their playoff chances, but they ended up going 0-3-1, and one of those regulation losses was to the Ottawa 67s, who are now 1 point behind them for that final playoff spot in the East. The race for 8th, it just could go down to the wire, and they do have one more head-to-head matchup with Ottawa coming up, and that happens to be this weekend. So another big weekend here for North Bay. It starts Thursday at home against Niagara. Friday, they visit the Brampton Steelheads, and then they're home to Ottawa on Sunday. That could be a huge matchup at Memorial Gardens. At number 16, I have the Sioux Greyhounds. They're up 2 positions this week. And for the Greyhounds, 2-1 was their record last week. Wins over North Bay and Sudbury. And they're now tied with Owen Sound for the final playoff spot in the West. So for the Greyhounds, if they are tied at the end of the regular season with the Owen Sound attack, they'll play a 1-game playoff to decide who will sit 8th in the playoff picture. And with the tiebreaker, the Greyhounds would have home ice if that does in fact happen. The tiebreaker being regulation overtime wins. Sault Ste. Marie has 22, while Owen Sound has 20. So it could change between now and the postseason. Say if Sault Ste. Marie wins a couple of games in a shootout while Owen Sound wins in regulation or overtime, then it'll switch. Then the next difference, I believe, would be head-to-head or goal differential. So the ROO is the first tiebreaker category, and then they go from there. For the Greyhounds, they wrap up their 7-game homestand with 2 home dates this weekend. Friday, they host the Barrie Colts, and then Saturday, they're home to the Oshawa Generals. At 15, the Guelph Storm, they fell 3 positions this week, and the Storm's playoff hopes, they took a hit. They went 0-3-1 last week. Guelph 6 points behind Owen Sound and the Sioux with 2 games in hand, and they're 7 points back of Sarnia with 1 game in hand. So the mathematics shows Guelph still has a chance, but this is a very crucial week for the Storm. They just played 2 games. It starts Friday at home to Sarnia, so that's a team they're chasing, and then Sunday they will be in Kitchener. At number 14, it's the Ottawa 67s, the biggest climber, up 5 positions this week. And the Barber Poles, 2-0 is their record with 2 big wins last week against North Bay and Windsor. And if the 67s are going to make the playoffs, this past week could be that turning point that they look back on. Luca Pinelli, lights out. 1 goal, 5 assists, 6 points in those 2 wins. So if Ottawa is going to make the playoffs, they're going to need Pinelli and company to continue this momentum with the goal scoring. Still, I've called it a turtle derby in the past, and it has looked like that for the last couple of months between Ottawa and North Bay, and it's going to go down to the wire. For the 67s, they will be in Peterborough Thursday. They're home to Peterborough Saturday, and then Sunday they are against the North Bay Battalion. At 13, I have the Sudbury Wolves. They're up 2 positions this week. The win over Brampton, it was big. Kieran Walton scored the overtime winner. And we'll have to see if this helps the Wolves turn things around. Because before that, they had ugly losses to Saginaw and the Sioux. So moving up the power rankings, kind of faint praise here for the Sudbury Wolves. They're kind of boosted by other teams falling in the power ranking. So for Sudbury, they're 7th right now, 4 points back of Niagara. So the game Wednesday night at the Sudbury Community Arena is going to be big. They're going to host Niagara, and then Friday they're home to Oshawa, and then Sunday they're home to Barrie. So 3 important Eastern Conference opponents coming up this weekend. At number 12, I have the Erie Otters. They're up 1 position this week, and it's been a win-1, lose-1 situation for the Otters. 2-1-1 was their record last week. The game against Peterborough, though, it got out of hand. It all started when Alex Messier went after Graydon Strohack before the face-off. It looked like Strohack may have said something to Messier to prompt the response. And then the 2 coaches going nose-to-nose between the benches had to be separated by an arena staff member. They had security there. The referees guided them down the tunnels to make sure they left the playing surface. So, yeah, what a game that was at the Erie Insurance Arena. And for the Otters, I do believe they have the talent to compete. It's just been a disappointing season so far for Erie. Obviously, Matthew Schaefer not being in the lineup hurts, but we'll see if they can gain some momentum heading towards the postseason. Coming up on Friday, they're home to Owen Sound, and then they take on the Attack again at home on Saturday. At number 11, I have Owen Sound. No change from last week. Now, if you take away Friday's 9-1 loss to the London Knights, this Attack team, they've been playing some pretty good hockey. A team that looked like they wouldn't make the playoffs is now tied with the Sioux for the final playoff spot with 51 points, 1 point back of the 7th place Sarnia Sting. So for the Attack, they're a team that battles hard, and they do not make things easy at the Bayshore, as they showed that Saturday when they won in a shootout against the Kitchener Rangers. Now, coming up this week, they're going to play 2 games in Erie, Friday night and Saturday night, down at the Erie Insurance Arena. At number 10, I have the Brampton Steelheads. They're down 1 position this week. The Steelheads, they've been playing some very good hockey, so the only reason they're down a spot is because they were passed. For Brampton, 2-0-1 was their record last week. That includes an overtime win over North Bay with Porter Martone scoring the game winner. And then Brampton, they're on an 8-game point streak right now. 7-1-2 over their last 10 games, so not too shabby. The Steelheads, 5th in the Eastern Conference, 10 points back of Barrie, Oshawa, and Kingston, who all sit 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, respectively, in the conference. This week, they have a big game at home against Oshawa Wednesday, and then Friday, they're home to the North Bay Battalion. At number 9, I have the Flint Firebirds, who are up 1 position, and this is the reason why Brampton fell 1 spot. The Flint Firebirds, 5-game winning streak. Since doing that video looking at the playoff race in the Western Conference, the Firebirds have been playing at another level, and they've earned important wins last week over Erie, Sarnia, and Guelph. And they're 8 points ahead of the Sioux and Owen Sound, so as long as they don't suffer an epic collapse here in their remaining 9 games, this should be a playoff team. Now for Flint this week, they're home to Saginaw Wednesday. Friday, they're home to Brantford, and then Saturday, they're home to Sarnia. At number 8, I have the Oshawa Generals, who fell 4 positions. And it was two very tough opponents this week for the Oshawa Generals. First place was on the line Friday in Brantford, where they ended up losing that one 5-3. And then they lost in overtime to London last night. So Oshawa, right now, third in the Eastern Conference. They're only 3 points back of the Bulldogs for first in the Eastern Conference standings. So this is a very good Oshawa team, but they will want to avoid falling to fourth, as that would put them in a first round series with the Brampton Steelheads. That seems to be the team that will likely finish fifth in the East. So out of those teams battling at the top, you want to avoid that fourth seed, I would believe. Now, coming up Wednesday, they will be in Brampton, so there's an important game. Friday, they're in Sudbury, and then on Saturday, they visit the Sioux Greyhounds. At number 7, the Windsor Spitfires. They fell 4 positions this week, and the trip through the East Division was not kind for the Spitfires. It started off with an emotional win in Peterborough before losing to Kingston and Ottawa. And I don't think this is a time to panic if you're a Spitfires fan. This team 1 win away from clinching their third West Division title in 4 seasons. So this team will likely finish second. They just got to finish out the rest of the regular season. And you know what? A little adversity never hurt anybody. This could be a good building block for the Spitfires going forward. And this week, just 2 games. It's Thursday at home against Kingston, so a rematch from last week. And then Friday, they visit the Kitchener Rangers. So 2 of the top teams in the Western Conference set to battle it out at the odd. At number 6, I have the Saginaw Spirit. They're up 1 position. And what a lethal offense the Spirit team has. 2-0-1 was the record last week. Wins in Sudbury and North Bay, where they outscored their opponents 15-5. So goal scoring, not a problem for the Saginaw Spirit team. And looking at some milestones, Zane Parekh, he made history, becoming the first defenseman in OHL history to record 2 30-goal seasons since Bobby Orr was the last one to do it. So Zane Parekh and Bobby Orr in the same category for stats. Michael Misa also became the highest scoring player in Saginaw Spirit franchise history. He's now sitting at 251 points, passing Ryan McDonough. So congratulations to both Parekh and Misa. This week for Saginaw, they will be in Flint Wednesday. Thursday, they're home to the Barrie Colts. And then Saturday, they're home to the Brantford Bulldogs. They're going to face 2 of the top teams right now in the Eastern Conference standings. At number 5, the Colts. They're up 3 spots this week. And for Barrie, they seem to be finding their stride now that the flu bug has kind of passed. Colts 3-0 was their record last week. They needed a shootout against Guelph and overtime against Saginaw, though. Anthony Romani, he's been heating up. Goals in 3 straight games, along with Owen Van Steensel. So the 2 players they acquired at the OHL trade deadline now starting to find the back of the net a little more regularly. And the Colts 10 points ahead of Brampton for first in the Central, which means they need to win just 4 over their next 9 games to clinch the Central Division title. So that is within reach right now for Barrie. This week, they're on the road. It starts Thursday in Saginaw. Friday, they visit the Sioux. And then on Sunday, they're in Sudbury. At number 4, I have the Kitchener Rangers. They're up 2 positions this week. And for Kitchener, 2-0-1 was their record last week. But they looked a little out of it in their overtime win over Sarnia. And then they lost in a shootout to the Owen Sound Attack. You're going to get these kind of games from time to time, especially when the players, I think, are a little more focused on the playoffs. The Rangers, they're on a 5-game point streak right now. 6-2-1-1 is their record over their last 10 games. 6 points behind London for first in the Midwest Division, with 1 head-to-head matchup remaining against the Knights. This week, a big game at home Friday against Windsor, and then Sunday, they're home to Guelph. At number 3, the Kingston Frontenacs. They're up 2 positions. For Kingston, they were 1-1 last week. A big win at home against the Windsor Spitfires, extending their franchise best 14-game home winning streak. So setting a franchise record is pretty exciting. But then they fell 6-3 in Barrie. And when you look at these 2 games, Charlie Schenkel, he was the difference maker in the win against the Spitfires. And then in the game in Barrie, Kingston controlled a good portion of that hockey game, especially at the start of the 3rd period. It wasn't until late in the game where the Colts started getting the bounces, and they scored 3 unanswered goals in a span of 3 minutes and 29 seconds. So coming up this week for Kingston, 3 games on the road. It starts Thursday in Windsor. Friday, they're in London. And then Sunday, they visit the Niagara Ice Dogs. A bit of a unique road trip that we don't typically see on OHL schedules. Windsor, London, Niagara. At number 2, the London Knights. They fell 1 position this week. And for London, 2-1 was their record last week. But that loss to the Niagara Ice Dogs surprised many around the Ontario Hockey League. 6-4 final against a Niagara team that was on a 12-game losing streak. And I'm kind of wondering if maybe the Knights were caught overlooking the Ice Dogs. It was a bit of a trap game because they were in Oshawa the following night. But it was an impressive win, though, in Oshawa. Easton Cowan getting a hat trick and scoring in overtime. So they looked like they, picked up the pace from what happened in Niagara. And you're going to lose some of these games. And for the Knights, 9 regulation losses all season, so not a concern right now. But for London, 6 points ahead of Kitchener for first in the Midwest Division, and they just need 3 wins to clinch the division. That's all it's going to take over this final stretch. This week, a huge game Wednesday night. They're going to be in Brantford to battle the Bulldogs. Friday, they're home to Kingston, so a top team from the Eastern Conference. And then Sunday, they visit the Sarnia Sting. So at number 1, it's the Brantford Bulldogs, up 1 position. And this is the first time all season a team from the Eastern Conference has taken top spot in my power rankings. And the Bulldogs, huge win at home Friday against the Oshawa Generals to take first place in the conference. And then they won in overtime against the Petes. So the Bulldogs, 8-1-1 is their record over their last 10 games. They have a 3-point lead for first over Barrie, Oshawa, and Kingston, who are trying to catch them. And top spot in the conference, I think, is going to just come down to the last day of the regular season. I would not be surprised. And for Nick Lardis' watch, 66 goals. That's where he stands right now. 8 games remaining. So 4 goals away from reaching the 70-goal mark, which is quite remarkable. And I know Brantford fans loving what they're seeing right now. And there's just so much excitement around this franchise right now. This week, a huge game Wednesday. The top teams in the league will meet in Brantford as the Bulldogs host the Knights. Friday, they travel to Flint, and then Saturday, they visit the Saginaw Spirit. So that's how I see it from the booth. Let me know your thoughts on the week that was, and what are you looking forward to most in the coming week. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't clicked subscribe already. I know the channel has been continuing to show signs of growth, and I appreciate all the new subscribers who've clicked subscribe this past week. And if you're one of those people who continue to come back to check the channels, feel free to hit subscribe and join the conversation as we get ready for this final push towards the playoffs. So again, thank you very much for your time. Talk to you soon.